welcome once again to Living in the 21st Century. Joining me today is Angela Renee Simpson, musician and voice teacher. Angela, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's an
Thank,
honor.
thank you so much. Could you briefly just explain to us what's your career as a musician and voice teacher, etc.?
Oh gosh. Well, I've been singing classical music for over 30 years now, and I am transitioning from stage productions to teaching voice privately. I've been doing that for about 12 years, teaching privately. I am also my name of my studio is the Simpson Vocal Studio, and it's only an online studio. I've also been a voice actor now for about 2 years,
Okay.
voiceover actor, where those voices you hear on the radio or in commercials, that kind of thing. That's another thing that I do. I'm also the host of a podcast called Juicy Interludes with Angela, that is sponsored by Verismo Magazine, where I discuss opera topics, the hot topics of the day, and a lot about the opera business.
Okay.
And then I am the program director and also the vice chair of the board of a nonprofit called CAPA. That's the Coalition for African Americans in the Performing Arts. I am the program director for an initiative that we created called the Masterclass Series. And what we do is we give masterclasses, vocal masterclasses for right now, to HBCUs. We give them to the HBCUs for free. So we fly in the facilitator, which we call the music master. We fly them into wherever the particular school is. We pay for all their housing. We pay them their fee. And they come in and give master classes, vocal master classes to the students at that particular HBCU. And I've been doing that now for 9 years.
Well, you, you have a powerful track record. tell us, tell us a little bit about the cheer for Black performing artists. What that is like at this point.
For Black performing art, you
Performing
mean
artists,
classical
yes,
music, and what it's like for them right now?
yes, and
Well, um, what I can say is it's a lot. Well, I'll say this: it's a lot more diverse than when I came through,
okay,
um, uh, because of certain factors such as
right,
the murder of George Floyd. Um,
yes,
that really put some emphasis on the lack of diversity in opera. Um, uh, uh, a lot of people spoke up. A lot of opera companies stepped up to the plate and realized that the productions that they were putting on did not match what was happening in society or who was involved in who we have in society. Um, since that happening, there have been a lot more um, Black performers on stage. There have been a lot more Black composers having their works performed in regional and major opera houses. Um, there have been some change in the administrative part of an opera house. We had our first Black female general director, uh, who was in charge at Dallas Opera. Um, I'm not Dallas Opera. I made that mistake. I'm sorry. Fort Worth Opera, Fort Worth Opera in Texas, and some music administrators and music advisors now are people of color in some of these regional and major opera houses. So there have been some changes. Um, not, in my opinion, not enough.
Uh,
Um, but there have been. There have been.
I'm glad you brought that up because I interview several performing artists and opera singers and soprano, etc. And I often ask this question because I know up to recent, we have people like Andrea Bocelli, Andrea Roy, who have like hundreds of thousands and millions of followers all over the world, and they're like the on top of the food chain, right? When it comes to performing arts. And yes, I heard that for black folks, opera singers, they are coming up and so forth. But I try to understand what it would be like for them to have a mass market or be able to penetrate that market, when in essence, the black population are not so much opera-oriented or soprano-oriented or singing that kind of performance arts form. What future would they have? Because when it comes down, I see that the white performing artists and composers and so forth, there's a platform there for them. They get good monetary support, just like with the Boston Pops. There's something there always for them. But when it comes down to minorities, would they get the same financial respect or support that these elite performing artists have, even though that the quality of work that the blacks are producing is on par?
Yeah, let me answer that question. When you mentioned Andrea Bocelli, what was the other name that you mentioned?
It's Andrea Roy, I think that's his name.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that name.
Yeah.
But let me say this. Andrea Bocelli he is classically trained, but he took a route that most opera singers do not take. When you say Andrea Bocelli, that's what the common people understand that name. They hear his name all the time. They say opera singer because he's made himself available to the masses. There's still there's a large stigma with opera, especially in the Black community. Opera back in the day was this elitist form of entertainment. It was only for white people, and rich white people at that. And it still has the stigma today, unfortunately. And that's not the case. In some major opera houses, you can purchase a cheaper ticket than you can to go see a Broadway show. But that's not advertised. The common person doesn't know about that. They think when you think opera, they think gowns and tuxedos. They think the tickets are $300, $400, $500, and they're going into an area where if the opera is in a different language, they won't understand what's happening. I had a friend of mine. I just asked perchance if they had ever gone to an opera, and they said to me that no, they didn't go because they didn't want to look stupid, and that made me feel so sad. Opera houses, even if in any language that it's done, if it's besides English, there are subtitles there for you to read in English, so you understand what the people are singing, what the artists are singing. Also, there's synopsis. Synopsis is in the programs, so you know what the story is about. So it makes it. Unfortunately, this is not advertised. This is not known to people that you can go in as you are. You don't have to be dressed in a tuxedo and gown to go to see an opera on a Wednesday evening. I wouldn't say go in sneakers and torn up jeans, but business casual wear, something you would wear on a date, that's fine to wear to an opera. You will feel welcomed. You will not feel there isn't anybody there to make you feel out of place. But as far as the Black artists, when you said the comparison, we've been around for a very long time. Black artists in opera or classical music have been around a very long time. We just don't get the same exposure as our white counterparts. So I would say to anyone that's watching this, and if they're interested, you have to think of this not only as an art, but think of it as a business. You are a business. You're what you're doing as a talent is a business, and you have to treat it as such. And you have to promote yourself. Back in the day, the opera houses decided who they wanted to promote to make them a star, so to speak. That's no longer the case. Even with our white counterparts, that's no longer the case. You have to promote yourself. The opera houses are not going to do it because it's money. It costs money to do that. Um, but Black singers have been around for a very, very, very long time, and we're just starting now again to get our exposure. When I was coming up, there were singers like Leontine Price, Jessie Norman, Kathleen Battle, all Black female opera singers. Um, the male opera singers did not get as much publicity um, because, well, let's call it what it is. No one wanted to see, let's say if the role was Othello, which is a Moor, which is a Black role, no one wanted to see an actual Black man on stage in a love scene with a white soprano. Those folks who were promoting or not promoting, those who were backing with the money, backing the production.
Right.
No one wanted. They didn't want to see that. They didn't want to see that. So they were not hired. We just had. There are tenors out there, Black tenors that are doing the role of Della. Russell Thompson is one. We just made history with a Black tenor playing the role of Radames at the Metropolitan Opera. His name is Lemmy Pullum. He is a friend of mine. He made history as being the first Black man to play the role of Radames at the Metropolitan Opera. So again, which is a love interest role, which is I think his counterpart, the soprano playing Aida, was Caucasian, was white. So again, we're breaking these barriers little by little, little by little. But we've been around for a very, very long time.
Okay.
Very long.
Okay. I want to touch a little bit about voiceover, and also before we get to that, we want to look at your career as acting in the acting capacity. Could you briefly go over both of those for me?
Yeah. Well, opera, you have to learn. You have to know how to act in opera. It's plain and simple. Everything is sung. It's not like musical theater. Musical theater, you have dialogue with musical numbers spread in between, sprinkled out throughout the show. But opera, everything is sung. All the dialogue is sung. So you have to know how to act in some respect in that way in order to interpret. If you're singing in a different language, you need to show the audience that you know what you're doing, what you're singing about. And show that in your body and your facial expressions. So acting is a big part of it. My voiceover work was something that came about because of COVID. I myself did not lose any work because of COVID. I kind of transitioned out of doing opera productions, and I did not have any contracts at the time. I was really teaching full time, and COVID hit. So I didn't lose any money. As a matter of fact, I made more money teaching during COVID than I did singing. So, but I always had an interest in voiceover work. Always had an interest. But back in the 90s, it was a very cliquish profession. It's very hard for a woman to get in, and it was very hard for a person of color to get in. Not all the time. There were a few male voiceover actors that were getting quite a bit of work. Of course, James Earl Jones, David. Oh, what's David's last name? Oh, it just escaped me. Um, and uh, um, and they were getting work all the time. So a friend of mine had mentioned that she had taken some classes with a particular voiceover acting training, and I decided to do that during COVID. And it took me a little over a year, with all the training. And I can honestly, I am a professional voiceover actor now.
Beautiful.
It's a simple. It's again, singing is wonderful. Singing is wonderful. I could not imagine not singing anymore. But you can't put all your eggs in one basket. You have to find something else. There may
Yes.
be times where, as COVID happened, or even before that, the real estate bubble. When the real estate bubble burst, a lot of contracts, music contracts, were lost because there was no money coming in. People those couldn't make those donations, or people couldn't afford to buy tickets. So some orchestras closed, some companies closed. So you have to find another way to make a living in order to survive. And
Absolutely.
putting all your eggs in one basket for opera doesn't make good sense. So I have another skill in case this happens again. I can do voiceover work and also do my podcast. My
Beautiful.
podcast.
Tell me, is there a big market for voiceover, and what the demand is like?
Oh yes, oh yes. There is a big demand for voiceover. It was before COVID. I want to say a lot of it was um, in studio, in a recording studio. People would go into a recording studio and do the work that they were hired to do, whether that be the voice for a commercial brand or be a voice for a um, a corporate video that was being done, or e-learning, or audiobooks. Audiobooks are really big now, especially because of COVID. You can have the physical book, but a lot of people do like to hear a voice reciting the book while they do other things. So yes, there is a big demand for voiceovers. I happen to get in when the Black voice was, again, very popular. My speaking voice is very low. It's kind of I don't compare myself to her because it's a totally different voice, but I had that Viola Davis type sound that a lot of clients are looking for in some cases for their work. So I came into during a time where that was the niche that was needed. So it was very lucky for me that once I finished my training, that I was getting hired to do these things. So, but voiceover work is it's hot, very in demand. I would suggest, I see on TikTok a lot of people put up these little TikToks saying you can do a side hustle reading books. It's a lot more than that. It's a lot more training than that. Please don't believe the TikTok hype. It is not true. I have equipment here that costs thousands of dollars because you can start off small. You don't have to start off, your equipment doesn't have to be that expensive, but the more you work, the better your equipment becomes. So I would suggest getting the training, find good training course, do that, see if you have the stamina and the guts to do it, and then go from there. But it is a very big business.
Beautiful. What's your advice for those young people today who want to pursue the route of becoming a great performing artist, whether it's in opera or classical or whatever the case may be, especially as a color person? How could you engage their vision to see that it could be profitable oriented as they pursue the future?
Well, I've considered myself a working singer. It really depends on who you are as a person. What do you want to gain from your singing? Do you want to be famous? Do you want to be have those names that are up there, like a Leontine Price or a George Shirley, the first black man to sing, first black tenor to sing at the Metropolitan Opera. Is that what you want to make history? Is it that you want to make history, or do you want to sing and make a good living at it? I would say to young students now is to know who you are, and to continue to hone your craft. Your the human voice, male or female, singing voice, I should say, doesn't mature until they're about 30. So your voice is still growing in your 20s, in your teens and 20s. It's still growing, it's still maturing. You may find it may change here and there. You may start off as one voice type. You may start off as an alto and then or a mezzo, and you find out they're a soprano later on, or maybe vice versa. You never know. But I will say, continue to train, continue to hone your craft. But please, 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 think of this as a business. When you go to audition, don't take it personally. Don't take it personally. It may be that particular director or artistic administrator loves your voice, but you're not right for the role that they want. And don't put all your eggs in one basket. We all have multiple talents. We all do. It's not just one major talent that we have and that's it. We're all good at some things. Find that other thing that you're good at and learn a way of monetizing that. So that way, when the phone doesn't ring so often, that you're not sitting there at home trying to figure out how you're going to pay your bills. Have another, if you're, I know, I'm not going to name her name, but there's a singer, a soprano who's also a real estate agent. She's a very, very profitable real estate agent, but she also sings. So I would say, continue to hone your craft. Think of yourself as a business. Think of your singing as a business as well as a talent. And then find another talent that you're good at where you can monetize also.
Okay. Culturally speaking, we're heading now on our next final 3 minutes. Culturally speaking, could you tell me, for our culture, specifically for our minority culture, how can they best capitalize on the present market, or how can they really evolve, grow as an artist, and say, well, this is how I'm going to make my living. This is how I'm going to make this my career. I know you just give brief pieces of it, but for inspirational and motivational purpose, because we know that there are a lot of young people who strongly considering it, and there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of young performance artist students going to college every year. But you don't want them coming out of college and giving away their talent for free or just playing a gig here and there. And as you just said, bury the eggs in one basket and don't know where to go.
Well, when I say you said something that really hit home about singing here and gigging and doing it for free. As an example, strangers would ask me what I do for a living. And I say I'm a musician. And the next question they ask, oh, what instrument do you play? And I said, no, I'm a singer. I sing for a living. And they go, oh. So most people think singing is very easy. It is not. It is not. It's not a profession. It's not a very easy profession. It's not a very easy life. There are times when you are working, and then there are times when you don't hear the phone ring for 6 months. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not a career for the faint of heart. I knew as a child that the only thing I would ever do is sing. I knew I was going to grow up and sing. There was nothing there. You couldn't change my mind about it. You couldn't tell me I was going to do anything else. I always knew I would be a singer. What kind of singer, I didn't know, but I knew I would always sing. For those I would say don't give up. Don't give up. Continue to hone your craft. Um, it's it is a business. That's the first and foremost. It is a business. You want to build an audience. Now you can use social media for that to build an audience, to build followers. Um, you can look at the artists that are in R&B or pop music. A lot of them have gone independent. They've gone away from from the record companies and released their own music on their own. That way, all the money stays with them. Um, I would say research, look at examples of other artists, see what they did or didn't do, whether that be pop music, rap music, classical music. Um, uh, I just don't want to say don't give up. Don't give up. If your dream is to sing, then make that dream come true. But don't put everything into that dream. Always make sure you have a backup, whether that be you're a secretary, whether you are a paralegal, or if you enjoy being a nurse, or it. I myself, when I first started, I would sing, but when I didn't sing, I did temp work. When I lived in New York, I did temp work for 10 years. I was a temp. So that gave me the ease of leaving when I had to go do a gig.
Okay.
So I would say don't give up. It's not for the faint of heart. It's a lot of living out of suitcases, living out of hotels. You're gone. Sometimes you miss holidays, you miss Christmases, you miss. It's not for the
Okay.
faint of heart.
Well, Angela, I want to thank you so much for joining me here today. We certainly speak again. We come to the end of our